Hi, and welcome to week 2, Understanding Old Testament Narrative, part 1. Now, today is the day of the eclipse, and so I'm wearing my eclipse t-shirt. I'm actually recording from our cabin in North Carolina, and we're going to have 100% eclipse, and so I'm kind of excited to go see that in a few minutes. But before I did, I wanted to spend a few minutes with you guys setting up our week 2 assignments. Now, the goals for this week are to apply interpreted methods in the evaluation of a narrative text. So in this case, we're not looking at poetic texts or etiology texts, but we're looking at narrative texts, which are texts that are designed to tell a story and through that story communicate God's point and word. So we're going to learn how to interpret those and try to understand what the original author was attempting to communicate. Second, we want to develop a personal interpretive methodology for analyzing biblical narrative. Same kind of ideas in goal 1, but I want you to not only learn about different methodologies, but begin to develop your own methodology that you can use over and over again. And then finally, to evaluate the tension between divine inspiration and classic narrative storytelling. And there is a concern here because when God inspires an author to tell a story, does every aspect of that story have to be factually, historically correct? Or can God inspire a story that does not include absolute things that happened, but communicates God's absolute truth? And there are differing opinions on that, and I want you to begin to at least discuss those differing opinions. So we have 2 assignments and 1 discussion post this week. Assignment 2.1 is to begin to create a word study. One of the things when we drill into a text is to understand what is meant by different words in the Hebrew text. So I've created a 20-minute video that you'll be able to watch this week that goes into the steps to create a word study, especially when you don't know the Hebrew behind it. But we're going to begin to bring you up to speed on how to identify a Hebrew word, and then through only using English to understand the range of meaning of that word and therefore provide a little more context. In Genesis 1, verse 26, God says that he created mankind in the image and likeness of God. And I love this passage because it tells us that we are like God, and at least in the initial creation, and that we are in the image of God, and that's something to be celebrated. But what does it mean? If we look at likeness, which in the Hebrew is demut, D-E-M-U-T, pronounced T-H or sometimes, but demut in the Hebrew, if we're in the likeness of God, does that mean that we look like God? Does that mean that God has, in my case, almost no hair anymore, or in your case, perhaps blonde or brown hair? Does that mean that God has a nose? Or does that talk about spiritually we are like God? We kind of pass over this verse, but we could spend an entire semester trying to unpack what it means to be in God's likeness. And is that before the fall? Are we still in God's likeness after the fall? And so this assignment is to, after reading the word study resource guide and watching the video on how to do a word study, I want you to look up every instance in the Bible of the word likeness. Now, there are some other words that could be translated into English as likeness, but specifically, I want you to look up the term demut in Hebrew and see how it is translated in every occurrence in the Bible. And that's going to give you an exhaustive understanding, or semi-exhaustive, as to how the term demut can be understood. Following the resource guide, evaluate, and by the way, I've put in purple following the resource guide because there are multiple steps that I want you to show me in your assignment, and that's 1 through, I believe, 11 steps that you have followed in the resource guide to come up with a evaluation of the word as it is used in the Old Testament, with particular emphasis on its use in Genesis 1:26. Then I want you to conclude with a paragraph explaining the range of meaning for the word and its most likely meaning in Genesis 1:26. So after the end of this, hopefully you'll be able to tell me what you think God meant when he said that mankind is created in God's likeness. So a fun assignment, but also an important assignment because understanding the range of meaning of different Hebrew words is a great way to unpack what God's author is trying to communicate. Now in assignment 2.2, we're looking at context. A second way that is really important to understand a passage is to understand its context. So I'm wanting you to write an essay. After completing the reading incline, write a 2 to 3 page paper summarizing the proper way to conduct a contextual study of a passage. Now, because this is an essay or a paper, I am looking for a cover page, I am looking for a bibliography in addition to your 2 to 3 page paper. As I've mentioned before, I'm not concerned about page length, so I believe this assignment can be done completely in 2 to 3 pages. But if you run over, I don't mind. I will read as much as you feel like writing. I want you to master the content, not master how to write a 2-page paper. Be sure to include a discussion of the historical cultural context and include a conclusion summarizing your finding and reflecting upon the importance of understanding the context of a passage in your hermeneutical methodology. Finally, we have a discussion question this week, and I want, in your opinion, does the biblical author's use of narrative components like plot, character development, and dialogue diminish the authority of Scripture? So if God, in fact, gives us a story, using not the term narrative, but a story where, hey, Paul, say hi, you're on camera. Oh, I'm sorry. I am recording. That's my friend Paul. He's in from Texas, and he's here to watch the eclipse with us. Also a Christian and a great guy. So in your opinion, does the biblical author's use of narrative components like plot, character development, and dialogue diminish the authority of Scripture? So in the narrative account of Abraham and Isaac, where we have a plot and we have a narrator who, in fact, gives us information, and we have dialogue. Does that dialogue have to be exact to what actually happened? And if it's not, if that narrative is intended to communicate a larger point, but in fact every point of the narrative may not be historically accurate, would that blow up or diminish the authority of Scripture? And I bet you guys have some interesting ideas on this. So when I say in your opinion, I am looking for what do you think, but I am also looking for what do you think based upon your research. So after reading the textbooks and in light of reading the textbooks, how does that inform and support your opinion on plot, character development, and dialogue in relationship to the authority of Scripture? So after finishing your first post on Friday, I want you to respond for B-level work to at least 2 of your peers. For A-level work, I'm looking for ongoing engagement over the weekend. And I want you in your responses and your discussions to consider what factors or angles might the author have missed, the author of these discussion posts, and what might you add? Or, after considering these questions, answer the following. How was their perspective helpful, keen, or correct? And do you agree or disagree with some of their points? Initial posts are due on Friday, discussions over the weekend, ending Monday at midnight. Some last thoughts, really going back over these 2 assignments and discussion posts, I think we're hitting some meat on some of those ideas that, at least as you begin the hermeneutical or biblical interpretation process, some of these points are real points of stumbling that I want you to, with your classmates in a safe space, really begin to explore. As always, be sure to put your name in the file name of your assignments. If you're sending me emails, I am teaching section 01 and section 07 of this same class. So as you email me and say, I'm in your BI1103 class, it's helpful if you identify I'm in BI1103-01 or -07. It helps me find your work a little faster. So if possible, help to include that section number. And as always, email me with questions. Feel free to schedule a time that we can talk as well by cell phone. I am happy to help walk through assignments as necessary. And I want you to be successful in this material. It's too important to have you stumble and be afraid to reach out. So please communicate with me as needed. With that, have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoyed the eclipse today, and I will talk to you soon.